Hello, I'm Emily Rhodes. Now, can you guess why I'm sitting here in this particular room of my home? Why I am holding a banana and why I am sporting these very cool new tracksuit bottoms and even a cup in this colour? Well, it must be because I am going to talk to you today about Kitchen by Banana Yoshimoto, translated here by Megan Backus. It's a very sort of strange, funny little book that I'm really excited to share with you. I was trying to think what to talk about today in this introduction to it, and in many ways it's quite a difficult book to talk about. It's quite hard to pinpoint something in it. It's kind of slippery. So I thought I'd perhaps begin by just talking a little bit about the context and then the kind of feeling it inspires in me, and then hopefully that will inspire you to get reading and to come and share your thoughts with me on our walk. So this is the February pick for Emily's Walking Book Club. For those of you who don't already know, we meet once a month on Hampstead Heath and also once a month in Regent's Park to walk and talk about the book. And we also have a Zoom book club and a weekly newsletter. So there's loads of ways to be in touch, and you can even just leave me a comment sharing your thoughts on the book if that all sounds too complicated. So I chose this book partly because I read this very interesting Guardian article by John Self, not Shelf, although he does have a lot of books on his shelves, about the kind of vogue for Japanese literature. And I've put the link to that in my weekly newsletter about the book. And I really enjoy a lot of Japanese literature, contemporary or otherwise. I was lucky enough to review Convenience Store Woman when it came out for The Guardian. I'm a big fan of Ryu Murakami. I think that's right, not the famous Murakami, although I'm also a fan of him. I've been to Japan and loved reading some more kind of classic Japanese books there. There was one in particular sprung to mind called Kokoro by Soseki, and others too. Anyway, in this article, John Self said, Banana Yoshimoto was one of the first people to kind of create this trend for Japanese literature in translation. And I was like, who is this Banana Yoshimoto? How have I missed her? So I immediately went and bought a copy of Kitchen, which is her sort of breakthrough book. And I can really see how it has such appeal. It's kind of extraordinary, and that's why I wanted to share it with you all. So what is it about? So it's told from the point of view of, oh God, am I going to get the name wrong? Mikagi, is that right? God, that's terrible. I should have checked that. Yeah, Mikagi. Mikagi Sakurai, and sorry if I pronounce these names wrong. And her grandmother has just died, and we learn that she's been living with her grandmother all this time. So she's now very much sort of re-orphaned, as it were. And the book begins with this encounter with this boy, Yuichi. I hope that's how you pronounce it, Yuichi Tanabe. And it's kind of about their, I wouldn't say friendship, about their relationship, and how hard it is to define that relationship and how intense that relationship is. And it kind of begins, she has this real affection for Kitchen. She learns to cook very well in it, and food plays this really important part. And interestingly, I found it was the food that kept kind of anchoring it in Japan for me. It felt often as though it could be anywhere in the world. It felt very universal. These conversations, the feelings felt very universal. And then there'd be a mention of soupy rice or katsudon or something like that, and it would immediately put me in Japan, which I really loved. And it really made me want to go and eat a lot of Japanese food, not just bananas. Sorry, I can't resist the banana here. So I thought I'd just read a tiny bit out from very near the beginning and then use that to talk about their relationship and I suppose the feeling of the book for me. So this is from page 5 in this edition. This is the Faber members edition, which is really beautiful. They also do a nice paperback too. Okay. Ding dong, suddenly the doorbell rang. It was a somewhat cloudy spring afternoon. I was intently involved in tying up old magazines with string while glancing at the apartment listings with half an eye but no interest, wondering how I was going to move. Flustered, looking like I'd just gotten out of bed, I ran out and without thinking undid the latch and opened the door. Thank God it wasn't a robber. There stood Yuichi Tanabe. Thank you for your help the other day, I said. He was a nice young man, a year younger than me, who had helped out a lot at the funeral. I think he'd said he went to the same university I did. I was taking time off. Not at all, he said. Did you decide on a place to live yet? Not even close, I smiled. I see. Would you like to come in for some tea? Sorry, I also made some tea. No, I'm on my way somewhere and I'm kind of in a hurry, he grinned. I just stopped by to ask you something. I was talking to my mother and we were thinking you ought to come to our house for a while. Huh? I said. In any case, why don't you come over tonight around 7? Here's the directions. Okay, I said vacantly, taking the slip of paper. All right then, good. Mum and I are both looking forward to your coming. His smile was so bright as he stood in my doorway that I zoomed in for a close-up on his pupils. I couldn't take my eyes off him. I think I heard a spirit call my name. Okay, I said, I'll be there. Bad as it sounds, it was like I was possessed. His attitude was so totally cool, though, I felt I could trust him. In the black gloom before my eyes, as it always is in cases of bewitchment, I saw a straight road leading from me to him. He seemed to glow with white light. That was the effect he had on me. Okay, see you later, he said, smiling, and left. So I read that and I think of my life here, where most of the day I'm sort of very happily working from home and the doorbell rings like all the time. And I always rush down, interrupted, looking often like I've just got out of bed, even though I've been up for hours. And, it's not this intense encounter with this sort of half-known person who bewitches me with like a spirit. And there isn't this sort of straight road between me and that person. And they're not glowing in white light. Normally it's a delivery or, as was the case yesterday, it was my neighbour who locked herself out and wanted to sort of break into her own home. That was quite exciting. But I think as an adult, well, maybe this is just me, but life is, wonderful, but perhaps quite mundane in a lot of ways. And usually you kind of know what's going to happen. The doorbell rings and it's, a parcel for next door and they're not in, or it's the postman, or, maybe it's the veg box. Well, it's not this kind of extraordinary encounter. But even when you do meet people as an adult, I think it's really unusual to have such an intense connection with someone, this feeling of really, bewitchment, I suppose, is what Yoshimoto calls it. And also, there isn't that feeling of just going with where you're tempted to go. So what I mean is when somebody comes and says, why don't you come round tonight at 7 o'clock? Here's the address on a piece of paper. You don't say, oh yeah, sure, see you there. you're like, oh, sorry, I don't have a babysitter, or oh, I can't for tonight or next week, but could we book it in for 3 weeks' time? Or oh, I'd love to, but actually I'm not feeling great. Spontaneity in the adult world is rare, or certainly in my adult world is sadly very rare. And I think that thing of youth, of just being able to kind of go off on a whim with someone, sort of choose your path on the moment. It reminded me a bit of, going traveling or something, not booking anything in, just seeing where you end up, deciding to stay a night, maybe 2 nights, moving on, meeting a strange person, going off with them for a bit. There's a real freedom here, and this feeling of, I suppose, along with that freedom, there is perhaps an aloneness or a loneliness. And one of the signs, one of the reasons I'm less spontaneous and able to just go off on a whim is because luckily I have family and all sorts of work commitments and things like that I really value. But, perhaps having all these commitments means you can't be spontaneous, but they do, I suppose, mean that I'm not really very lonely. Whereas perhaps if you were completely free, there's a real loneliness there, but there is also a freedom and that comes with that, and perhaps that's quite empowering. I think it's also a really wonderful flip side of the aloneness that you feel when you've just lost someone. When the person, your only other family has died, and she's suddenly completely alone, but yet off she goes, and it turns this real sadness into a positive, I suppose. So I think I'm really rambling on. I think what I'm trying to get at is that this book captures for me this freedom of youth and the spontaneity of that, the not knowing where your path is going, and also the intensity of the relationships that one forms at that age. I mean, I can certainly think of, well, probably a handful where you kind of wonder if you're going to spend the rest of your life with that person. Luckily, with one of them I did. Haha, so far. But, I think you don't know where you're going, and so everything is sort of up for grabs, and you're open to everything in a way, and that's kind of what enables this attraction and bewitchment and ability to follow, desire to follow someone, openness to that. And I suppose reading this book made me feel intensely nostalgic for that age and that mindset. And I think, although I'm extremely happy where I am, it has slightly made me want to have some of that openness again. And perhaps I will resolve to do that. Does that make sense? Have I just talked a load of rubbish? I hope not. I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts about this book. There are some really sad moments, and I think it's a very emotionally intense book, but I do think it's ultimately very hopeful and very powerful, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts about it. The next book we're going to be doing, similar colour scheme, is this. One of my favourite writers, Penelope Fitzgerald's Human Voices. But yes, this is for February, and I'm Emily Rhodes, and this is for Emily's Walking Book Club. I'd love to know your thoughts. Thank you.